Instructional practice 10 is collaboration with families in promoting literacy. Nothing more relevant than the current situation we find ourselves in. But at any time, this is sometimes an area that we forget, and research is suggesting that this collaboration with families will assist us to improve literacy learning outcomes. When you think about collaboration with families, we want you to think about how we can engage families in the student learning rather than just expecting them to be involved in school. Through different reasons in people's lives, they're not necessarily coming into school, but they are engaging or could engage with some support with their children's learning. So we need to think about this. You can see at the bottom of the screen there's some research that says if educators make use of the informal learning that occurs in the homes and communities of students, the achievement gap between the marginalised students and the mainstream students can be reduced. Professor David Pearson, an international researcher in the area of literacy, reminds us that we have a higher accountability to our families than just test scores. We have an accountability to actually really understand the children. We need to know that the children are who they are. They know what they know, they bring what they bring, but we need to make what they bring into the learning environment not an inconvenience, but a curriculum opportunity, and use and celebrate it. So how do we use the richness of the communities from which our children come to really enhance the learning opportunities in the classroom and at home in the community? The essential practices tell us that in preschool to year 3, that educators should be helping families to add to their repertoire of strategies for promoting literacy at home. And so these things include everyday activities as they're engaging with their children in the home, as they're cooking, as they're talking with friends, travelling, however they might be travelling, in a car, on a bus, as they're hanging the clothes out on the line. Whatever it is, it's the actual interaction that makes a difference. The talk that is involved in that interaction will promote literacy learning. Also encourage families to speak with their children in their home language, or the language that is most comfortable for them to use, so that they can build those language structures and the vocabulary in their home language if that's the most comfortable language that they're using. We need to support our families to read aloud to their children and to stop and discuss the text, things that they like, things that were funny, something they've seen before, something that made them think about. So we may want to use some great models. So who better to think about than Mem Fox? Use her as your mentor. You'll find the link in your handout with the video links and the readings for Essential Practice 10, the link to the 10 Commandments for Read Alouds that Mem Fox has written. And she has a lot of really useful information on her website, including that she reads aloud around about 3 books at any one time are available on her website for you to listen, or the students to listen to Mem read her books. They will learn about expression and excitement when reading. And this is a great model for our families to go to this website and to be motivated to enjoy reading aloud with their children. During read alouds, maybe you can, in the current climate, be offering parents some ideas of things that they can think about. We talked about some of these back in Essential Practice 3 and Essential Practice 4 and 5 for primaries as well. Here's an example. Diary of a Wombat, fantastic book by Jackie French. In fact, go to Jackie French's website and you'll see the amazing collection of books that she has written that would support much learning that could happen in your classroom. If you're reading Diary of a Wombat, then you might like to suggest that your parents stop at words that they'd like to wonder about. And they could actually have an alpha box that you would send home where they could add some words that they really wanted to wonder about when they were reading any texts together. And then that could be something that you share between home and school. We need to provide literacy supporting resources as well. And that's books from the classroom that students can borrow. Currently, access to libraries and online texts as well as digital texts. I mentioned Kristen Zemek in Essential Practice 8 because she's done a lot of very recent work on moving to an online environment. Her expertise is in digital literacy. She's written a great book called Amplify. I suggest that you go to that link. You'll find it in Essential Practice 8 in your links and reading document, and listen to her and look at her website for opportunities and learning for you on the online, learning in this new online space. Well, not that it's new, but that we need to be using it more regularly. You might like to look at the Newslear, the Wonderopolis, National Geographic are all freely available sites where there'd be great texts for students to learn from and to read at home. In addition to providing digital texts, books from school, we might be thinking about providing them, or we need to be thinking about providing them access to apps or applications that support reading and writing. And when you're looking at apps, please remember that we want them to be actually making meaning and creating apps rather than blackline masters that are coloured and move around on a screen. Here are some great apps that you might use in various stages of the writing process. So, planning for writing. Think about how could students plan for writing using a voice recorder or Poplet or any of the others listed there. When they're drafting their writing, no better app than a book creator, iMovie, Puppet Pals. Of course, they could be using Google Docs as well. And then publishing and sharing. What about starting a class blog? A great way to share and publish writing. All of these things are contributing to the family's engagement in student learning. Importantly, we've talked about this before in many of the other practices, especially practice 1, we need to promote children's independent reading and support families to provide reading and academic learning opportunities at home, of which may come from our support. If you want some more information and something that has been written specifically with parents in mind, you can go to the links that I put in Essential Practice 8 to Noella Mackenzie's work. And here, one of them is called Helping Your Child with Reading. It was number 3, Children Reading by Themselves. It's a great little article that might be helpful for all of you as you're working with families and encouraging reading at home. And once again, I've put this diagram on the screen that you would have seen in one of the previous practices to remind us how important it is for children to have opportunities to read independently every day. It's so important. We don't want this to stop, especially now that children are moving into an online learning environment. Here's some ideas that we've taken from Lynn Sherratt around helping parents to take a deliberate pause when they're thinking about talking to their children about their learning. Rather than them saying, oh, what did you do today? And a child says nothing, ask them to think about, what did you learn today? Now, this could be very helpful over the next few months as well, as parents get into the use of the language of learning. So what did you learn today? How did you go? What did you do if you didn't understand it? And how can you improve on your learning? And what are you proud of? These are questions that are very helpful for parent-child interactions. Many of you are probably using Seesaw as one way to communicate with your families. It's a great tool, and there are many other platforms like that. One of the things that to promote reading is on Seesaw, you can actually have children read for a short period of time to Seesaw, and then you can listen to it, approve it, and it goes up onto their Seesaw page. That might be something you would like to investigate if you haven't already done so. And where can you go to for help? Well, the Australian Literacy Educators Association has a wonderful website that has resources, some public resources and many other resources for those that really encourage you to join as an individual member, so that you'll have access to journals about literacy research, webinars and national conferences, and lots of local events organised by your local ALIA council in Canberra as well. One of the free resources on the ALIA website that is great for parents is called Little People's Literacy Learning, and a whole lot of little modules around early learning for parents. So this would be a great resource to tap into right now and see which parts of this that you might want to send to parents. When you're working with parents, remember, don't send them great chunks. Small manageable pieces at one time is always very helpful. Take some time to check the information on the ACARA website for families. Might give you some information. It's all freely available and very helpful. And finally, a word from Dr. Stephen Peters, a fabulous educator. He reminds us that expectations make a difference. Ensure difference doesn't become a deficit, because nobody rises to low expectations. He said to us at the end of an international conference seminar, "My teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was." So let's go about our business, helping every student to know that you think they're smart and that they're capable of learning, and have those high expectations so all children can achieve and be inspired by you as an educator. Now that brings the 10 essential practices to a close, but with that comes some responsibility for you. You will have in the Google Classroom a document called Circle of Practice. You need to locate the circle of practice that's for your particular year level. So if you're teaching preschool, there's one for pre-K, there's one for K to 3, and there's one for 4 to 6. They have a short summary of the 10 practices for your particular area. I want you to consider each of the essential practices and decide if they belong inside your circle of practice or outside. To belong inside the circle of practice, you need to feel that you are actually able to use these practices consistently around 90% of the time. If that's not the case, then write the number of the practice on the outside of the large circle, because it's the numbers on the outside of the circle that might help you to determine a goal or a team goal of where your next steps in your own professional learning will be. Which elements of these practices do you need to learn more about? We've taken a very brief look at each practice. We could spend many hours investigating each of these elements. You decide which of these practices requires more attention by yourself or your team in order to improve the student learning in your class. To support you to take action, we've also included an action learning plan pro forma. This is about you making a commitment, thinking about what might be your problem of practice in the classroom, what could your learning goal be, what are you trying to improve in your practice to improve student learning, what will you do, what action will you take, and how will you know if it's worked? Because we must check in on, did it make an impact on student learning? And then you come back to your planning teams, talk about what you did, and think about, so what would you do differently next time? Or what might your next learning goal be? To take these 10 essential instructional practices deeper into our classroom practice, we need to be actually reflective practitioners, actively involved in action learning on an ongoing basis. I thank you for your time, and I encourage you to go ahead and take some action.